Good morning, Chair Ballendorf, members Garrett, Holmes, staff, and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Good morning. Thank you, Gretchen. I'll now convene the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board Caucus meeting for Tuesday, April 21st. First up on our agenda today is our policy and rules team with a couple of updates and board meeting preparation. And so I will turn it over to Kevin to kick us off with the general updates first and then proceed to the other two items. So Kevin, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chair Ballendorf and board members Garrett and Holmes. It's been a little while since we postponed this one, so good to see you all. With efforts underway to implement 5 bills passed during the recent legislative session that will require rulemaking, the rules team currently has 12 open rules projects and will be requesting approval to file for expedited rulemaking on 3 more tomorrow. Under our delegated authority, the Director's Office filed a CR 101 on April 13th to initiate rulemaking on second substitute House Bill 1701, allowing liquor licensees to lease space to one another. And we will be filing a CR 101 in May to initiate rulemaking on House Bill 1941, allowing agricultural cannabis cooperatives. In both cases, we should be able to focus narrowly on the legislative implementation, keeping the scope limited to alignment of rules with statutory changes, and as such, we do not anticipate significantly contentious or lengthy rulemaking with either of those. The rules team also received 5 rule petitions since our last board meeting, all of which require a board decision and formal response within 60 days. Daniel will be presenting our recommendation on the first of these today, and we plan to address the other 4 at the May board meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. So moving on to current alcohol rulemaking, we held a public hearing for the contract kitchens rule implementing engrossed House Bill 1602 on April 9th at 1 p.m. We had no comments and should be ready to present the CR 103 filing package at next month's board meeting accordingly. Then we have the retail alcohol product placement rulemaking, which is currently undergoing a third-party economic analysis. The contractor sent out surveys in mid-March to randomly selected liquor licensees who would potentially be impacted by these new regulations. And we've been informed that the participation rate has been okay so far, but it could be better. So to ensure as robust a data set as possible, we're coordinating on a communication strategy to get the word out to licensees that the survey is legitimate. And it really is an opportunity for licensees to share their perspective, including any potential challenges, which will ultimately help us make better data-driven decisions regarding this rulemaking.
Right.
We're still a couple of months out before the economic analysis will be completed, after which point we'll evaluate the analysis and determine next steps, including whether any additional rule amendments are necessary before moving forward with the CR 102 proposal. And then we have the expedited trade practice repeal, which was filed last month using expedited rulemaking. So we should be ready to file the CR 103 for adoption following next month's board meeting. And so moving on to cannabis, we'll be holding a public hearing for cannabis advertising, implementing engrossed House Bill 5206 on Thursday, April 23rd at 1 p.m. And assuming no issues requiring amendment of the proposed rules, we'll be prepared to move forward with the CR 103 in May on that one as well. Then we have the cannabis retail management agreements, implementing substitute Senate Bill 5403. That remains to be a really heavy focus for us right now. We held 2 stakeholder sessions in March that were well attended, and we received a lot of really constructive feedback from stakeholders, both during the sessions and the written comment period afterward, which just ended on Friday. We're currently evaluating that feedback to determine next steps, and it's clear that significant disagreement among the industry remains surrounding the issue of discounts and volume pricing in particular. Of the 133 emails we received just last week, 78 were clearly opposed to volume pricing and discounts more generally, while 54 were written in support, of allowing volume pricing and developing clear rules around discounts more generally. So when we account for duplicate emails and other variables, it would appear that folks are fairly evenly divided on this topic. And so
Kevin, I
given
have a
this,
quick question.
absolutely.
Are the tone of those emails and the content of those emails very much the same theme throughout, or are they bringing up very different opinions and positions in those emails?
They're very much in alignment with one another. In fact, I would say predominantly they would appear to be form letters from the associations that were kind of copied.
Okay, that's what I
where
was
people,
wondering.
yeah, and there were a smattering of other issues as well, but it overwhelmingly the concern is this volume pricing and discounting issue.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, given the division and the statutory ambiguity surrounding the matter, it's likely going to take some time yet before we're at the CR 102 proposal phase, which is very tentatively slated at this point for later this summer. Then we have, with 5403 and a high volume of petitions recently consuming a lot of our time, staff capacity has been limited, but the cannabis R&D testing and samples project team continues making progress toward the next draft, and we expect to be ready to share it with stakeholders later in May, with an announcement on stakeholder sessions to follow. And then I had also mentioned at the last board meeting that we would be gearing up to begin more actively engaging on the petition-driven cannabis batch tracking rulemaking. And while that's still the case, the implementation of some of this recent legislation has to be prioritized. So it will still be a couple of months or so before we're in a position to actively focus on that one. Moving on to petitions. Following this rules update, as mentioned, Daniel will be presenting the director's office recommendation regarding the petition we received on March 3rd from Barbara Jones. She was requesting amendments to WAC 314.02.010 to expand the definition of complete meal to include prepackaged foods, which has implications on the type of liquor license that an establishment qualifies for. And then also, as mentioned, we have 4 more petitions that we received, and we'll be presenting those at next month's board meeting. And then finally, just to follow up on the Kingsbury petition that we discussed at the last board meeting, I wanted to mention that the Policy and Rules team submitted an article in the March LCB Topics and Trends newsletter on Medium, highlighting the concerns surrounding compliance with medical cannabis excise tax exemption requirements. And we've also coordinated with E&E on an enforcement notice that was sent out at the end of March to remind licensees of the necessity to check patient recognition cards in the DOH database with every tax exempt transaction and other related requirements. And then our counterparts at DOH have also confirmed additional education and outreach efforts with licensees to reinforce expectations and reiterate requirements. And they're working with their vendor on enhancements that will allow owners to track whether employees are completing card verifications in the system as well.
Great.
So I think that pretty much covers it for the rules updates. I do also just want to highlight the fact that while we got off relatively easy this legislative session compared to last, it still resulted in additional work on top of an already full workload for the rules team. So, while things are manageable and the team is doing a great job staying on top of things, capacity remains a significant concern, and it's really an ever-present limitation on us, particularly when additional unexpected work requires us to divert our focus, such as is the case, for instance, when we receive a high volume of petitions in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So again, I think we're in a good spot right now, but I just kind of wanted to provide that context. So that should do it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, Member Holmes, I see you've got a question or comment.
Yes, Kevin, thanks, nice job, and you guys hang in there. But on the alcohol placement survey that's ongoing, we didn't mention that in our last Alcohol Advisory Council, and I'm sorry for that. Is it possible that you could provide links or some narrative for us to distribute to at least the members of that council?
We could, yeah. So we're working on a Gov delivery announcement right now, and once that's finalized, I'll make sure that that you get that so that that can be shared with advisory council members.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing.
I'm really glad to hear your suggestion, Member Holmes. I've been thinking a lot about communication with, and I don't run those meetings, the two of you do, but I just think that's a really good use of those committees, advisory committees between meetings. So great idea. All right, Kevin, a couple of comments. One, I want to go back to your comments about the Kingsbury petition. And I think it's such a great example, although the majority of the board said, hey, yeah, we don't want to, we shouldn't accept this petition, and it did not pass. It's such a great example of work that can still occur as a result of a petition coming in, even though we've denied the petition. So I really appreciate all the work between your team, E&E, et cetera, to really get that word out there. So really appreciate that. I wanted to go back to the alcohol, the contract kitchens comment that you made. If I heard you right, you said during the public meeting, there were no comments. Does that mean nobody showed up at that particular session, or was it just that there really was not a lot of comments made or no comments made?
Yeah, so I was referring to the official public hearing pursuant to the APA requirements, and we had one attendee, but the person attending didn't wish to make any comments.
Okay.
You know, throughout the rulemaking, we did receive some comments from folks that were incorporated into the final draft. But by the time we got to the public hearing, it appears that any issues had been resolved, and so folks had nothing to speak about at that point.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the only thing I was also going to close with, and it really just is repeating what you did or what you said in your closure, and that is a recognition of before, I think in our last meeting, we were getting down in the number of open petitions and, based on the legislative session and the new requests that have come in, it sounds like you guys are really busy. And then I had one more thing. Let me see if I can think of it. Well, it slipped my mind. There was one more thing. If I think of it, I'll bring it back later. But thank you very much for your update. Really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Okay, well, we will move right into your next agenda item, which is board approval of CR 105 package for 2026 expedited legislative implementation.
All right. So on behalf of the Director's Office, I will be requesting approval to file the CR 105 expedited rulemaking package to align existing rule language in 5 sections within Chapter 314.55 WAC with new statutory changes resulting from 3 bills passed during the 2026 legislative session. The proposed rule changes are explicitly dictated in statute, and the board has no discretion regarding implementation. If approved, we will file with the Code Revisor's Office following tomorrow's board meeting. There will be a public comment period through June 20th, and assuming no significant changes are warranted following the public comment period, we plan to seek board approval to file the CR 103 to adopt permanent rules at the July 1st board meeting, the earliest eligible date per APA requirements for expedited rulemaking. This rulemaking package focuses exclusively on updating rules to align with statutory changes resulting from 3 bills. House Bill 1526 amends existing statute to allow snack bar licensees to serve wine by the glass in addition to beer in open bottles or cans. Engrossed substitute House Bill 2476 increases the maximum number of seats a theater can have to qualify for a spirits, beer, wine theater license from 120 to 200. And engrossed House Bill 2681 increases license fees for cannabis producers, processors, and retailers. Because the proposed changes are limited to only revisions that are explicitly dictated in statute, the board has no discretion regarding implementation, and substantial confusion among licensees and the general public could result from the failure to update rules. This rulemaking qualifies for expedited rulemaking under the APA. The director's office will be requesting approval of the CR 105 package accordingly. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Kevin? Seeing no questions, Kevin, I will say I was reminded what I was going to say, and it had to do with the delegation of authority. And this being such a great example of a decision this board made to delegate authority to the rules team for these things in which we have no discretion, and just really has, in my opinion, expedited the process whereby we would today potentially be determining whether we accept them or not, given the fact that we have no authority to not accept them. And this, again, I just want to point out the efficiencies that we put into place and how well that is working with this regard. So thank you for that. All right. Anything else, Kevin, before we pass it on to Daniel?
No, that'll do it. Thank you so much. All
right. Great. Thanks so much. All right, moving to our final agenda item under the first policy and teams updates, we'll go to Daniel, who will give us an update on rule petition review and consideration of amendment of WAC 314-02010 to allow packaged food to qualify as a complete meal. So Daniel, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Vollendroff, members Garrett and Holmes. As stated this morning, I'm going to preview a response to a petition for rulemaking that I'll be formally presenting for recommendation during tomorrow's board meeting. On behalf of the Director's Office, I'm recommending denying the petition for rulemaking for reasons I will briefly preview today. On March 3rd, the LCB received a petition for rulemaking from Barbara Jones on behalf of White Horse Saloon, requesting to allow pre-prepared meals to constitute complete meals for purposes of rule. RCW 6624-410 Section 2 defines a restaurant in part as, quote, an establishment maintained in a substantial manner as a place for preparing, cooking, and serving complete meals. However, statute does not define what constitutes a complete meal, and as such, we define that currently in WAC 314-02010 or 010. That definition has multiple parts, but one of those parts says that menu items that consist solely of the following do not count as complete meals: pre-cooked frozen meals that are reheated, carry-out items obtained from another business, or snack food. Now, the LCB has a long history of figuring out exactly what constitutes a bona fide restaurant versus a tavern that offers token food items. And this was especially relevant prior to liquor privatization because a tavern versus a bona fide restaurant, a tavern wasn't able to serve spirits. Additionally, taverns can't allow people under 21 on the premises. So qualifying as a restaurant allows you to expand, serve families and do other things. In the 90s, a restaurant had to have certain expensive commercial kitchen equipment. That was part of our rule definition of a restaurant. That requirement was removed in 2005, and then concerns arose about restaurants having a single hungry man meal that was theoretically available. These concerns led to the introduction of the frozen meal, carry-out, and snack food exclusionary language in 2010, and it's remained in rule ever since. The petitioners raised mostly economic concerns about the increased cost of fresh food. And while fresh food is expensive, statute makes clear that restaurants are defined primarily as an eatery. Pre-prepared meals or prepackaged sandwiches prepared by a third party are fine to eat, but being served them on a plate doesn't turn a liquor licensee into a restaurant. Current rule also doesn't require that every single element of a meal has to be fresh in order to constitute a complete meal. Hence, it just can't be entirely prepackaged or entirely pre-frozen, hence use of the word solely. I'm going to go in much more detail about this tomorrow, but that's sort of the overall gist, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, any questions for Daniel this morning? Member Holmes?
Just a quick one, Daniel. Can you clarify if this is within our prerogative to make this change? or is there really clear guidance from the legislature?
What do you, just to clarify, what do you mean by prerogative? Do you mean like, is it within our statutory authority? Like, are we permitted to change it?
Correct.
Yes, theoretically, yes. We have the statutory authority. We currently define what constitutes a complete meal. And so theoretically, we could change it. But I think that, the statutory definition of a restaurant does define it as somewhere for preparing, cooking, and serving of food. And I think that and some of these concerns were raised by staff, that if you're simply buying prepackaged sandwiches and all you're doing at your restaurant is taking it out of a plastic bag and putting it on a plate and bringing it out to someone, there's question as to whether that's really preparing, cooking, and serving the food. That's sort of the same reason why we excluded pre-prepared frozen food, because similarly, if you just take a frozen dish out of a freezer, take it out of the plastic and put it in a microwave for 3 minutes and then serve it to folks, there's a question as to whether that's really preparing, cooking, and serving a complete meal.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure I understood. Are we being asked in the petition to change a policy that we have the power to change? I'm not saying that I think we should grant it or not. I just want to make sure I understand where the legislature has spoken clearly or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am noticing, and I know there's one in Kirkland. I was trying to Google to see if I could find the name of it right as you get on the 520, but I am seeing more pop-up prepared meals businesses. And I'm just wondering, are we going to start seeing more of those? And are there going to be some conversation around this again? I haven't gone in there. I've always been curious, but it used to be a restaurant, and now you can go in. They do cook and everything and prepare it, but you could buy prepared meals. And I think it's to go, but then again, it was a restaurant. They might be sitting in there. I don't know. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go in there now. But I'm seeing more of those starting to open up.
Sure. So I think that's a fair point. And I think I would say a few things. I would say, one, I think that the distinction here we're saying is, so the place you're talking about prepares the meals there and then sells them to folks to go. I think that we're talking about a situation where another liquor licensee buys those meals and then serves those to folks. So it's, I think we're saying, if you want to prepare your own food and then serve it to folks, but also package it up and say, hey, you could either buy it here or you could take the sandwich to go, that's fine. We're just saying that if someone else then buys those sandwiches from you and sort of serves them, takes it out of the bag and serves them as their own, that's where we're like, well, you're not preparing that food, somebody else is. And I will also acknowledge that, frankly, the legislature has indicated that they're more open to this idea, with the contract kitchen sort of situation. And so I think that, but that being said, that was the legislature changing the statute to say, hey, this is the direction we want to go. And so if the legislature sees, for instance, if something happens and the legislature decides they want to look at how we define a restaurant in statute, and they want to sort of address that, we'll do the rulemaking that follows it. It's just, this to us is sort of taking a direction that the legislature seems to be heading, and us on our own kind of inferring that they want to go further. And that's something where we're like, we're not 100% sure that's how far they want to go. And it's also, as I've said, been something that historically we've had issues with in the past. The Hungry Man example I gave, I was going to talk about this tomorrow. That's not a theoretical thing. That's something that has come up at, there was, enforcement was going out into the field and seeing situations where a place would say they're a restaurant, but they would have a single frozen meal available in the back. I mean, this was 20 plus years ago, but it led to some of the things where we said, hey, you can't have the pre-frozen meals, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess that's what I'd say. What I'd say is that it's sort of, it is a complicated issue, and it is something that we're starting to see an expansion of, but It's something that we don't know that we're willing to take that next step without further legislative guidance on it.
I think that's a really great explanation, Daniel. And I appreciate, Member Holmes, your question about the authority here, because I think about the Contracts Kitchen, and yes, the legislature is signaling that they're willing to have some conversations, but I do think even though we have the authority, we would be jumping out ahead of legislative intent if we were to do this. I mean, there's a specific reasons why we differentiate between bars and restaurants. And I think about just up the street here, a new bar opened up, and I know what to expect there versus if a restaurant were to open up, but yet it was actually disguised, if you will, as a restaurant, and really what they were doing was serving more alcohol. That would have a much different impact on my community than a restaurant opening up. So I think this is a complicated issue. It's an issue that I think is worth discovering, as Member Garrett brought up. I mean, things are changing and evolving, but I think, in my opinion, it would be hard to enforce. I think it would also potentially, I could see situations where local governments step in and say, okay, we don't agree with this, and so we're going to put more rules into place to assure that certain things. So I think it could become very complicated, and just look forward to the conversation tomorrow. Member Holmes?
Just one more comment. I just want to point out that I think the 2010 rulemaking, we commented on behalf of the city of Seattle in support of it, because we were, it was legend, the $100 taco we would talk about, on the menu. And so, clearly a lot of gamesmanship, brinksmanship on that. But at the same time, economic times, where the legislature's going, I just, at the risk of suggesting to our beleaguered rules team that this might be an opportunity to do a deep dive, right? The idea that we have the expertise, it might even be useful to a subsequent debate in the legislature. But in any event, I'm not shy about it if we think think we should go there. I don't want to jump out ahead. I don't want to make just plant a flag somewhere. I would really appreciate an opportunity for the agency to exercise its expertise, to do the analysis, and to be that regulatory agency that says maybe there's a path this way, and it does yield some economic benefits. That's all.
I'm glad you brought up the city of Seattle. I mean, obviously I wasn't on the board in 2010, so I was thinking earlier when I was reading the material associated with this petition, like I would be interested if there were cities coming forward and saying, we support this and here's why, kind of thing. So it was interesting to hear that potentially that the city of Seattle did come forward, but it'll be interesting to see if we hear from cities around this issue. All right. Any other questions or comments for Daniel? All right. Well, Daniel, thank you very much. We will see you tomorrow.
Thanks so much.
All right. That takes us to our final agenda item, which is board member and executive assistant reports. So anything from board members today?
No.
Member Holmes?
Only that I am following up with Deb and Gretchen's assistance with some meetings that had been requested by Alcohol Advisory Council members, individual meetings, and I'm going to be doing that in the coming weeks or so. And as well, we'll make sure that we try to get anything out that Kevin shares for trying to spur some more interest in the product placement rules.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right. Anything from Gretchen or Deb this morning?
Nothing today, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. That concludes the board caucus meeting. So meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.